All right, so now we get into the fun stuff of what did not work with intermittent fasting. So you have the floor.
This is really hard to answer because the answer I want to give is nothing.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds silly to say that it was perfect and, there wasn't any problem, no complications at all, and it's all worked out great. Well, kind of has.
It's worked out great, but I mean, you talked about those parts that didn't work with that were hard, like the evening and the morning.
Yeah, the adapting
right
to a new pattern.
Yes.
Sure, that takes a little getting used to, and you have to kind of change your mindset a little bit. But it's kind of this adventure you're going on, not to oversell it, but you're
fasting convert.
Exactly. There's gonna be movies made about it. But you struggle a little at the beginning because, hey, I'm used to eating a snack at 9 p.m. And now I don't get to.
Right.
Okay, that's about it.
Right.
Once you get settled into your fast and you're used to it, and now there's some social engagement where you have to either break your fast too early, or really not even really start it, or you have to go through the social hurdles of explaining, no, I'm this weirdo that doesn't eat after a certain time, and no, I don't need any food. No, it's fine. And people constantly, they putting plates of food. Oh, here, let me get you some of this. Would you like this? Would you like to drink? No, I'm fine. I'm really fine. Are you sure you need to eat? No, I don't.
I must say you are much more adventurous with talking to people about intermittent fasting than I am. I think because I've had so many food restrictions and people are just like, what?
Yeah.
You don't eat dairy? What's a vegan? I don't know. What's gluten? What, I'm just so over it. And this is your first thing. So you're like, well, let me tell you.
Yeah. And,
This is a great thing.
I do tend to proselytize about it a little bit. I'm sort of evangelical about intermittent fasting.
Well, you don't
but,
hold sermons, but if people ask you,
no, if I had a mound that I could speak from, maybe. But people, it does come up a lot, and sometimes it's met with sort of weird resistance.
Yeah.
Socially, I had one exchange at my office where I was getting something out of the fridge. It was 10:30 in the morning. I was about to eat my 2 eggs. I was so excited. And a coworker walked by and made a Lord of the Rings joke, which was, oh, time for second breakfast, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know, not being territorial per se, but going, second breakfast, this is first breakfast. I don't eat until 10:30 every morning.
You're a brave man.
And this person looks back at me and goes, oh, that's so late. Why would you do that? And I said, well, because I do intermittent fasting. And I started down the whole thing. And the person's response was, oh, yeah, I do the 6 small meals a day thing. And I said, oh, that's great. Completely different sort of ideology. And their response kind of heated was, hey, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you. And I said, well, yeah, that's great. I'm just saying that the intermittent fasting thing, it's a completely different mechanism. Hey, whatever works for you. And it got kind of uncomfortable. I thought, oh, okay, sorry, geez,
Yeah, you're just in the baby steps of learning when you switch your diet with foods or whatnot. People get really sensitive and reactive, and either they don't want to talk about it or they get defensive because they're worried about what they're doing, or you're doing something that they feel like they should be doing, and then they don't process that internally and they put that on you by trying to make you feel, which doesn't work because you don't take any of that personally, but
no, I'm a robot. But conversely, there have been times where you'll explain things to somebody. A guy I work with frequently, this came up. A guy that I work with in a musician context. We were out playing a gig, and before the gig, we all needed to eat some dinner because we'd been trapped there setting up for hours. And I'm eating kind of late, and we were commenting on it, and he knew that I did this intermittent fasting thing. And he's like, well, boy, this is pretty late to eat for you. I was like, yeah, it's kind of weird, but whatever. We'll be fine. And then he starts talking logistics about it. He's like, well, I don't really eat after such and such a time, and I just drink black coffee in the morning. And we start putting it together, and he realized, well, oh, I guess I do a 12-hour every day, and he didn't even realize it. So there is the other side of the coin where sometimes people are maybe not immediately receptive, but they're curious about it and they want to have a dialogue. So
Yeah.
So it's not all bad.
Right. So to summarize, what didn't work for you is some of the social stuff, right? That comes up.
Yeah.
But I mean, you adapt pretty well to that, and then nothing else. You're pretty happy with the process.
Yeah, very, very happy. Seemingly universally happy with the way it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and again, we have not ventured into that like 24-hour or 18 or 24-hour fasting territory like a couple days a week or probably once a week, but maybe at some point and we can report back. But for the 16-8, it does work very well for you. So
yeah, it's worked. It's worked just exceedingly well.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so for what didn't work for me, I do have a few hiccups about intermittent fasting that I haven't enjoyed quite as much as you. And it really does go back to that, what we talked about a little bit earlier, into that kind of adrenal regulation and dysfunction thing where I am generally stressed and probably more so than you.
That's true.
Yeah. So, and going through medical school and all kinds of crazy stuff, like the adrenal glands, which are big ones to support, you dealing with this stress, are a little bit more burned out for me. So there is some research with women not doing quite as well with intermittent fasting. And again, that research, I believe, is mostly that 24-hour period, not necessarily the 16-8, but with fasting, you're increasing adrenal function, you're increasing adrenaline, which the idea with that hormonal response is that if you don't have food and you're out in the middle of nowhere as an ancestor, like, you better have some energy to go find some food, right? So, that's great. But if you already have kind of this adrenal issue where you might have spikes where there's already a lot of adrenaline and then you crash because your adrenals can't hold that pattern, right? They can't produce that much adrenaline and then not have time to recover, which is kind of a little bit where I am, I think. So sometimes reaching that 16 is just a little bit rough on the adrenals, and I can feel it when that happens, when I can feel my blood sugar really start to drop, and that's because cortisol has compensated for a fair amount of time. So cortisol helps to keep the blood sugar stable. And then if the adrenals kind of are like, giving out a little bit, that's going to drop, blood sugar is going to drop, right? So I have adapted, and that's part of why some days I do more of a 14, depending on stress level, some days 16. When we traveled to Iceland, I definitely got more back onto that kind of breakfast thing at 9 or 10 a.m. type of thing. Because that's kind of when we could eat breakfast there and have food. And I did just fine. And we did end up, still eating pretty early, and so it might have been about a 14-hour fast, in those days. And that's kind of what switched me from like, okay, let's not try to push it to that 16 all the time. Because one, it's hard with my schedule. And two, sometimes there are some not great effects that way. And for women as well, with the research, it can affect ovulation, it can affect cycles, hormonal cycles. So if you're trying to get pregnant, sometimes it's not the best thing to do intermittent fasting. Again, that is more on that 24-hour fast, which makes sense. If your body's like, holy crap, there's not any food, I got to conserve everything, it's not really going to want to try to reproduce at that moment.
Sure.
So 16-8, I think, is probably, you're not triggering all of that, but it's possible that you are. So I think that's my biggest thing with intermittent fasting was if you have adrenal issues, you're a little more sensitive that way to stress. Sometimes being flexible with that window is important, and just realizing some days you can go longer and some days you can go shorter, and just being okay with letting it flow that way.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then to dovetail onto that, I've read that, for people that are, say, chronically underweight, and they're trying really hard to put on weight, to put on healthy weight, probably not a good thing for them to do intermittent fasting. Again, I'm not a doctor, so.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, I don't have a very strong opinion. I would say it would really depend on who they are and what's going on internally, and if they do have blood sugar dysregulation issues or not. But again, fasting is a way to put on lean muscle mass. And again, the 16-8, I really don't know that our body looks at that as a significant stress unless you've got some adrenal stuff like I do. When you get more into that 24, your body's like, oh, okay, like
something's happening.
What is going on? Got to break down some proteins, which again, a good thing to kind of clean up the junk, right?
Yep.
One of my favorite people to kind of watch as well as Mike Mutzel with this stuff is Dr. Jason Fung. He does really wonderful things about fasting. He has a great website that I'll link to at the end here in the notes. It's called thedietdoctor.com, which, don't be scared. It sounds really not legitimate, the Diet Doctor.
Right.
But he's great. And he has a book out called The Obesity Code. And what I found really interesting was if he's talking about people who are fasting or have to practice this long term, you don't see a lot of excess skin on these folks that have fasted a long time, right? Or monks or gurus, that type of thing. Your body reabsorbs and it uses what it can, everything it can, every resource it can, when it's in this lower calorie state, right? So it's very smart about what it needs to conserve and what it needs to work on. So anyway, yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say on that, on maybe what didn't work. Yeah, so in terms of everything else, is there anything else you wanted to say just to kind of put it all together, put a nice bow on it, or have you said everything you would like to say about the experience?
It's great.
Go out there and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, really. It takes a little work to get used to it, and then just the benefits just seem to be mounting. You saw how little negative I had to say about it. It's just, I just can't say enough good about what it's done, and just feel way, way better for it.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to say it's very similar, and I had some unexpected benefits. I was really excited about it, and was happy to kind of find the happy medium for me, where it's not as kind of 16/8 as you. It's a little bit more flexible, but it works for me, and that's where I'm going to stay. And maybe once the adrenals kind of get a little bit more balanced, then the 16/8 is not a problem. So yeah, and again, just to reiterate as well, the dietdoctor.com for Dr. Jason Fung, and then Mike Mutzel and his website and podcast, High Intensity Health, are both excellent resources when you're looking at fasting, intermittent fasting, and the benefits. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed getting to see Chris. And
Hello.
I'm awkward, I know, sorry. Okay, so yeah, we'll do this again. We'll see what happens. It is fun talking to you, so.
The commute was a breeze.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well, right? It was not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
How about I just answer your questions like this?
It's addressing the camera directly.
Yes, Dr. Carter. I do think the sky is blue.
Well, weird.
Too cash. The cash lab is too...
All right.
Cash lab to the max.
All right, I'm ready now that you've abbreviated words.